Bienvenue, Monseigneur, Messieurs les Présidents, notre cofondateur, ainsi que les lauréats et vos familles, les alumni du Fonds Prince Albert. Je suis très très heureux que vous vous soyez déplacés. Et c'est un double plaisir de se retrouver aujourd'hui, parce que nous avons deux levées du Fonds Prince Albert, la pandémie oblige, et je crois que les restrictions qui étaient en vigueur l'année passée ne nous ont pas permis d'avoir cette cérémonie. Par contre, on a trouvé une voie cette fois-ci, et je remercie la FEB, Anne-Catherine, pour avoir organisé tout ça. Deze ceremonie is een ideale gelegenheid om onze laureaten te feliciteren, om de leerervaringen te vieren en om al diegenen te bedanken die PAF-projectmogelijkheden aanbieden, die in PAF investeren met hun tijd, hun kennis, hun vaardigheden en met hun financiële middelen. Het is ook een kans om de geboekte vooruitgang te meten en fellow alumnis te ontmoeten. Today I would like to expand on 3 points. The first one is the learning, and as Bart mentioned, the resilience that PAF laureates demonstrated over the last 2 years. It was outstanding. The second piece is PAF delivered double the number of laureates throughout the pandemic, which wasn't a given to start with, and whilst ensuring a great experience for the vast majority of candidates and of employers. And finally, as a third point, PAF is strengthened, and we continue to evolve to fulfill our mission and meet new expectations from society, from businesses, and from candidates themselves. So let's dive a little deeper into the laureates' learnings. So every year we gain feedback from the laureates in the form of a word cloud, and typically we see terms like challenging, enriching, eye-opening emerge. Over the last 2 years, we've seen entrepreneurial really rise to the top 3, also the word unexpected, and the word learning itself. And if learning is the ultimate gauge, I think we've had 2 very successful years with the Prince Albert Fund. You've overcome many hurdles in finding missions, the stop and go for leaving overseas. You've dealt with your own questions around health and your well-being, that of your families back home. You've had to deal with changing restrictions on travel and face-to-face engagement. And we know how difficult it is to develop a new business when face-to-face contacts are restricted. You've shown ingenuity, adaptability. You've demonstrated grit and mental strength to get to your objectives. And you've tested your boundaries. You've enhanced certain personality traits. And so with that, I would really like to tell you well done and big congratulations. I'm proud that we're contributing to develop the leaders of tomorrow with a broad vision, good self-awareness, because those skills is what the world and the business world will definitely need in the future. Now, PAF as an organization also delivered during the pandemic. I can say that it is a healthy organization. A few facts. So the number of graduates has doubled from 10 to 15 up to 2019 to now about 20 to 25. And thanks to my predecessor and the work done by the prior steering committee, we even have the ability to grant up to 30 grants per year. 50% of the laureates continue to be employed by the company that sent them overseas after their traineeship is over. I think that's a good sign of mutual confidence and a good experience. We've also seen over the last years that the proportion of scale-ups and startups is increasing. And we were discussing that earlier in the other room. Actually, it's about 1/3 of the projects that are scale-up and startups, and the vast majority of that third is in the field of digital and tech. And so we're pleased to see that this complements traditional industrial and service strength for Belgium. And then finally, since 2015, the destination setup has been quite stable. So we have about 40% of projects that take place in North America, about a third in Asia, about 15% in Latin America, and 10% in Africa and Middle East. And those latter two have been increasing recently because you can imagine that getting a visa for the US or getting into China has become more difficult with not only the pandemic, but also the increasing tendencies towards nationalism. So we have a healthy organization, yet we're never stopping, and we've identified many areas for improvement. So the first one is in terms of selection. We realized several years ago that we had the opportunity to reduce biases as we look at the paper files. We get 250 more or less per year, and then we invite 50 to 70 candidates for a live jury interview. And so we've really adapted the process to diminish biases as much as possible. And on top of that, we've trained all our jury members in terms of recognizing biases, which of course is something quite personal. And we've seen that the alumni that form the vast majority of jury members have also enjoyed what they could learn through this experience. So it's really been a win-win. I'm proud to say that we continue to have year in, year out about a 50-50 mix between males and females. The language makeup is more or less 2-to-1 Flemish-French, which is not too far from the graduate population split. Of course, we'd like to boost the French-speaking side of that proportion a bit. And finally, I'm also very pleased to see that we continue to attract not only business engineers and economics graduates, but scientists, law graduates, and young professionals, as well as engineers. A second area that we've decided to strengthen is preparation, coaching, and mentoring. And so this has happened with a reinforced training, a stronger networking amongst the candidates as a support network, and also a better formalized way for candidates to be followed, to be provided with feedback both by the companies and have the benefits, if desired, to have a coach from the alumni pool. Finally, we are also closing this experience with some reflection to anchor the learnings and learn from each other, and I think this is what took place today. So I'm looking forward a little later to learn more about this. So in summary, Anne-Catherine and the steering committee have leveraged the expanded financial capacity that we've had, whilst continuing to enhance the experience for both candidates and employers and all the stakeholders during this pandemic. And as a third and final point, I would like to point out that PAF is evolving. So, of course, a lot of things have happened in the world since we last met, both from a climate point of view. You know that the equivalent of Belgium burnt out in Amazonia over just 2 years, that Australia had 6% of its surface destroyed by fire. We've had the killing of George Floyd, which really crystallized the issue of racial injustice. Of course, the pandemic loss of life, the impact on mental health, on education, on social injustice and health inequities have come to the fore as well. And frankly, the miracle of having a virus identified and a vaccine produced in less than a year has taken place as well during that time. So some of this is encouraging. We've all learned to work in a different way, in hybrid ways, and of course a lot of this will stay. I think there's also some questions around social media and what is the benefit and what is the risk and how to best to use them, as well as machine learning. And finally, I think all of that has led us to question what we're here for, how do we want to spend the limited time we have here, and what are our priorities as we lead our lives. And so we've taken some of that thinking with our steering committee at PAF. We've listened to companies, we've listened to past candidates, we've listened to alumni. We've decided to create more space for the topic of sustainability, which clearly is a very important reason for candidates to choose a project and a company, and probably an area where they can bring a lot to companies. We're looking certainly at UCB for input of that younger generation to open our eyes to things that we're not seeing ourselves. So helping to bring those change agents on board with companies is key. From next year, we will also report SDGs and kind of pool that to see what PAF is contributing in terms of those goals, as any organization is now doing or starting to contemplate. A second area where we want to continue to push is diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have decided to expand our recruitment efforts through social media and alumni to reach communities that produce talented young professionals and graduates who perhaps don't consider themselves as being invited to our selection. We've also decided to make ourselves more accessible in terms of information sessions and lower the threshold. Not in terms of the quality of the people we look for, but in terms of the perception of accessibility. Finally, we've heard you loud and clear. Our laureates, you're desiring more flexibility, and I think it's a theme that we see in companies very much. So how do we bring in more flexibility in our program without eroding our brand and without threatening the quality of the experience is something we continuously work on. And then as a final point, we've also realized that the alumni are a source of influence, they're a source of knowledge and of support. We knew that, perhaps we could do more. And so, first of all, I welcome you all graduating today to this club of alumni. I'll ask you to participate actively and also tell you that Florian, who is present here, maybe you can wave a hand. Florian, who is running our alumni network, has actually followed quite a well-organized process to figure out what the expectations are. And the expectations are not for more. The expectations are for quality interactions, for giving back. And so she will come back to us with the output of this survey and with a few proposals, some of which will be launched around the new year. We have about a third of our alumni community that lives overseas, and so we will find a way to bring them on board as well. So, with all of this, I would like to take a special moment to thank our sponsors, and you will see that we have the McKinsey Prize coming up soon. We have the Belgium National Bank, VBO, as well as Russell Reynolds, so thank you. Again, thank you to the companies. With your help and all the alumni, we're on our way to reach 500 laureates within a couple of years, and before the 40th anniversary of the Prince Albert Fund, which is a very exciting milestone. So we're looking forward with those 500 people to continue to support Belgian businesses and change society. And it's in this context that I'm particularly pleased to welcome our keynote speaker, Marie-Amélie Leenaerts. Why her? Well, first of all, she's part of the alumni community, 2014. And we were talking about grit, about finding your way, about determining what you want to do in life. I think we're going to see a superb example of someone who's done that. She's the first Belgian woman who has actually crossed the Atlantic within the context of a race on actually quite a small sailing boat, 6 meters 50, which is not far from the length of some of your cars. So, kudos to Marie-Amélie. And, just looking at her professional experience, nothing destined her to cross the Atlantic, coming from Charleroi, which is not exactly at the coast. Working in communications with companies like L'Oréal, moving to Guatemala for Durabilis with the Prince Albert Fund, and then being a citizen participation consultant right now with EcoRes. I mean, those things don't necessarily lead to crossing the Atlantic, but we'll understand how she came to realize this need and this passion. And of course, she's been audacious. She's committed through her professional activity to sustainability. I think the human dimension she's bringing is going to be a great inspiration for all of us. So without further ado, let's welcome Marie-Amélie.